politics accepts to commercial real estate in Russia?
Politics in general should be there to support economic activity. Clearly, the geopolitical events of the last few months have been a complicating factor in that it's introduced a lot of uncertainty. And if there is one thing investors don't like, it's uncertainty. So when there's a question of uncertainty and doubt, the reaction of investors is to say, stop, we do nothing. So we have seen a very definite slowing down in actual activity from investors. That being said, we're still seeing real interest from certain investors, not from all.
Well, what are the sentiments of foreign investors now?
It's doubt. It's what's going to happen. Are things going to get quickly better, or could they get worse? And because of that doubt, they're saying, we leave Russia for the moment. The investors very unusually have to invest in any particular market or even in any particular sector. They can just as easily buy state bonds in Argentina or shares on Wall Street or real estate in South America or South Africa or Russia. And because of the uncertainty, they're saying, we leave Russia for the moment.
Well, what mechanisms can attract more foreign investments in Russia?
A quietening down of the political situation is one thing. There have been, quite apart from the geopolitical situation, what we have seen recently, and particularly in Moscow, is there's been almost too much activity, too many changes. I believe that the change in the property tax was inevitable and basically a good thing. But it was brought in very quickly without the full impact being clear for people. So it's a doubt, especially and it is effectively taking a significant chunk of the development profit from developers, because the higher property tax is going to reduce the net income of new buildings, with the result inevitably that the value comes down. Costs have not come down. So a clear and stable legislative and fiscal and regulatory context is the most important thing. That being said, historically, most international investors who have invested in Russia have actually made good profits. There have been some exceptions. People have done some silly things. People have got in occasionally into partnership with the wrong people. But that happens everywhere. But by and large, if you look at investors like Heinz or Heitman, they've done very good business here. And they're not leaving. But they're not making new investments.
In which segments of commercial real estate are more profitable to invest now? What do you think?
I think if we take the commercial real estate, basically because residential is really for local users more than for international investors. The three main sectors are office, retail and industrial. Offices, the only real market is Moscow. Even St. Petersburg is a much smaller office market and is a marginal office market. In Moscow, we have to be very careful because with the slowdown that we've talked about for investors has also affected tenants. Tenants have not been taking new commitments this year. But in parallel, so we've seen a slowdown in the take-up of offices. In parallel, there is quite a large construction pipeline of offices that is due to finish the end of this year, 2015, beginning of 2016, concentrated especially here in Moscow City, but also in a number of other locations. So we are expecting to see certainly an increase in vacancy in offices and certain pressure under rents. That being said, because tenants are not willing to take on new commitments, they are more likely to renew their leases in the buildings where they've already spent money on fit out, where they've got their staff that is used to coming, rather than moving into other buildings, even if they could make a saving on the rents. Because the cost of moving is typically about 1 year's rent. So in a period of uncertainty, people would rather just say, okay, perhaps we're paying a little bit more than we might have to pay in another building, but let's just stay here and see what happens. We can always think about moving next year. So there's a slowdown in activity, and therefore investors have to be very careful about the office sector. There is no doubt quality and location will be the winners, but so it's not a time to go and buy C-class offices in interesting locations. Industrial and particularly logistics, the market is still active, and there's still a great deal of requirements that are being only now serviced, so that the market is good, is largely balanced, slowing down a little bit, but there's not too much construction going on. So rents are holding up relatively well, and should remain in the $120, $140 a meter range for the next 18 months or so. Visibility in logistics is more difficult long term because construction is much faster. So there could be a lot of new construction in, say, 2 years' time that hasn't started yet. Whereas the development process for offices is more like 3 to 5 years. And really the star performer this year, and we believe very firmly in the coming 2 or 3 years, is the retail sector, where there is still a structural deficit in retail quality, well-located, well-designed retail space, particularly in the regions. And the regions, a lot of the big tenants, anchor tenants, people like Auchan, Leroy Merlin, Lenta, OK, are increasingly looking at the regions. So you're getting almost the same tenants in Yekaterinburg or Nizhny Novgorod, or even in medium-sized cities as you are going to get in Moscow. And yet rents are a bit lower and cap rates are higher, so you're getting much better value. So for my money, the place to look at the moment is regional retail. There are also some good opportunities in Moscow retail, but you have to be more selective because there's been more construction, and design in retail is essential. The well laid out retail centre with the balance of the right anchors and the right tenant mix to keep the customers coming is the most important thing. So, and the big international retailers are still signing leases, more selectively, more slowly, triple checking instead of double checking, but they are still signing leases, even with everything that's going on geopolitically.